A Kurt Russell sci-fi movie where he's fighting genetically engineered super soldiers on a garbage planet. Sounds fun to me. Okay, let's get started. Today I am going to be looking at Soldier from 1998. I went to my local DVD store that I get movies from, and I saw Kurt Russell on the cover. And I saw that it was a late 90s sci-fi movie too. And honestly, that was enough for me to bring it home. I had never heard of it. Nobody's ever recommended it to me. I've never even heard anybody talk about it. And up until it was in my hands, I didn't really know that it even existed. Is there a reason for that? Is there a reason that this Kurt Russell movie has passed me by over the years? Well, we're going to find out. So let's get started. Okay, so before we get too deep into this movie, I got to explain what made me decide to even take the movie home. I bought it because I'm a huge Kurt Russell fan, honestly. Between The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York, Tombstone, Bone Tomahawk, like even some like Overboard and some of his Disney movies, I'll watch almost anything he's in. Big fan, man. I had somehow never heard of Soldier, though. I mean, I saw Kurt Russell, I saw the late 90s sci-fi aesthetic, and that was just enough to take it home. I also noticed that Paul W.S. Anderson directed it, which immediately gave me an idea of the tone that I was about to get into. Now, as far as Paul W.S. Anderson as a director, he's not my favorite director, but he just has a distinct style. Like between Mortal Kombat, Event Horizon, Resident Evil, Death Race, and Alien vs. Predator, most of his movies, you know that he's the one directing it. If he's very action-oriented, he's very about industrial sets, explosions. Some people critically argue that he's action first and then story second, which is why some people don't like his movies. Me, it just depends on what he's doing, I suppose. And from the opening minutes of this movie, I knew exactly what the movie wanted to be. One more interesting thing as far as the people behind it, it was written by David Webb Peoples. He's the same guy who co-wrote Blade Runner. And he also wrote Unforgiven and 12 Monkeys. So this wasn't just like a throwaway script. This was something that an established guy in Hollywood was trying to make as far as a blockbuster movie. For years, because of David Peoples' involvement, there was a lot of rumors that this was like an unofficial like side quest or sidequel, however you want to say it, to Blade Runner. Kurt Russell's character's military record references the Tannhauser Gate and the Shoulder of Orion, which are the same locations mentioned in Roy Batty's famous speech in Blade Runner. There's even a wrecked spinner vehicle from Blade Runner on the Wasteland planet. And because of that, a lot of people were associating that as a side sequel to Blade Runner. But David Peoples later came out and vehemently said this had nothing to do with Blade Runner. He wrote it on the cuff. He meant for it to be its own story, but you can tell that if that's true, that Paul Anderson was at least a little inspired by Blade Runner. Now, as far as the setup, Kurt Russell plays Todd, who is a super soldier that is bred since birth to be a killer from a futuristic government. He is the strongest of his line of super soldiers, and there is a new generation of genetically engineered soldiers that are meant to replace him. He fights one of these soldiers, he gets left for dead, and he gets discarded in an obsolete wasteland. When he gets to the wasteland planet, he ends up coming across a village, and then the movie ends up becoming a clash between a man who's raised for killing and war and a village of peaceful settlers. He ends up getting exiled by the group of settlers, and then they realize they've made a mistake and they take him back into the village. When that happens, the same military that discarded him are now on the wasteland planet, overtaking it. And he is put in a position where he is forced to confront the same military machine that created him. Man, this movie's got a great late 90s sci-fi vibe to it. It's like a mix of Universal Soldier, Battlestar Galactica, Starship Troopers, and like just cable TV sci-fi. This was right before CGI really started taking over these kind of movies. I really like this era because of it, because you're kind of at the peak of them doing practical effects, explosions, and practical environments. And because of that, everything feels dirty and lived in. There's not that CGI polish, especially that early 2000s CGI polish that came after this. I showed a copy of my DVD. I ended up watching it on my TV in the background right there. And it was great on that. It made it feel like it was a movie that you would stumble on the Sci-Fi Channel, on TNT, USA, on a late night or a Saturday morning or something like that. Now, Kurt Russell barely talks in this movie. He looks like a tank, he walks like a tank, and he sells the whole role without needing speeches. But he still carries the movie throughout his presence alone. It's really interesting to me to think of him in that same vein of like a Jean-Claude Van Damme or a Steven Seagal or a Dolph Lundgren or a Stallone or a Schwarzenegger. I just don't really think of him like that most of the time, but putting myself in 1998, he probably was kind of aligned with those guys. It's just crazy to think of him as like a B-movie action hero, I suppose. As far as the supporting cast, you got Gary Busey, Jason Scott Lee, and Jason Isaacs are kind of the heavy hitters for dialogue, and they're the ones that really help carry what's going on as far as the plot. And it's really fun just seeing so many recognizable 90s faces show up in this movie. I mean, as far as what really worked for me, I mean, I'm a glutton for cheesy action, man. So it had a simple premise, but it had an effective one. It was an easy movie to follow, but it was never really boring. The pacing moves quickly and keeps things moving because of the action. The practical sets and the practical effects, the explosions, man, they just made me smile because it's not that I'm anti-CGI, but I just really like practical effects. Several moments in the movie made me laugh because of the cheesiness. Some were intentional laughs and sometimes not so much. The practical effects and set design do have a charm that's many modern CGI heavy movies just sometimes lack. Back to that dirt, I mean, there's just a polish sometimes that I can't stand. The movie doesn't have a lot of meat on the bones, but I was smiling the whole time just because of the cheese. The few things that kind of didn't work for me, and the soundtrack was not really that memorable. I don't even remember much about it. The plot was very paint by numbers. For me, that's not a bad thing, but others, they might not like that as much. I think my biggest gripe of the movie is probably this. When Todd winds up with the settlers, you get to see him act a certain way with the settlers, and I feel like they didn't allow the character of Todd the super soldier to open up as much as I think he should have been able to. I understand that the plot of the movie is he gets exiled from the settlers and then they have to bring him back in, but I still think that there was a certain point where it's like, okay, I get that this guy's been raised as a super soldier since birth, but he's still a human being, and he could have let off on the super soldier a little sooner. That would be my biggest gripe of the movie. Like I said, if you don't enjoy late 90s action movie cheese, this is not going to be a movie for you. I'm still just like really surprised that I had never heard of this movie though, because I looked up some information and I found out that it had a budget of $60 million. In 1998, that's a decent amount of coin to throw at a movie. But unfortunately, when it was released, it bombed, and it bombed hard. It only made $15 million, not even like $14.6 million worldwide. But ironically, aren't those the type of movies that end up developing a cult following? But overall, I enjoyed this movie for what it was. There was enough charm and cheese and explosions and unintentional laughs to personally get me entertained. This is the kind of movie that I'd gladly throw on getting off of a heavy day at work on a Saturday morning when I want to turn my brain off. I'm happy to have this movie on the shelf, and I definitely would put it on the equivalent of a high Riffit rating for me. And I haven't gotten too much into my rating system, but a Riffit movie to me, this is such a good example of it. It's one that there's enough there that I can watch this movie multiple times and just have a good time with. It's not one that's, I feel like everybody should own. I think it's an acquired taste, but I think those who appreciate that acquired taste will want to own it, which is why I put it in that high Riffit category. I don't want to say it's better than a movie that you just rent, because some of the best movies are ones that you just need to see once and move on. But it's definitely one that, like, I kind of don't mind geeking out having on the shelf. Like, have you ever seen this movie? Have you ever seen Soldier? And just start giggling. I'm like, man, you should watch it. You'll be in for a treat. So I think that it's a Kurt Russell movie that I'm glad I watched. It's one that I'm glad I know about because he really is one of my favorite actors. And I'll end up watching it again. So again, very high Riffit ranking for me. So with that is Soldier from 1998. So yeah, that's Soldier from 1998. It bombed at the box office, but over the years it's developed a cult following. What do you think? Is it one of your favorite cult movies? Have you even heard of this movie? Or are you like me and you haven't even heard of it until this video? And do you enjoy cheesy late 90s sci-fi action like this? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see later on what other cult movies and forgotten movies and crappy movies I end up pulling off my shelf and talking about for a little bit. So yeah, thanks for watching.